continuing with writing, the history of writing. If for a long time, until I did this series, I did not know what the Torah, what language did Moses write in? This question. We seem to think, well, I did anyway, that he had only two options. You understand, he lived in Egypt for most of his adult life until he was driven out into the desert, and then he came back. Then he took them wandering in the desert for those 40 years. And he wrote, there's no mistaking that he wrote. And what language was it? We seem to think, or I did, that the only options open were cuneiform or hieroglyphics, but he did not write in either one. So what was it? Was there another one? We're never told that. We know that later on in settled life in Canaan, there was another script, the Proto-Phoenician. So where did that come from? How did that evolve? Did he write in that script? That would be later, not during the Exodus time. So stay tuned. In the next post, I will reveal that. But I will continue a little bit longer with cuneiform and hieroglyphics. We know hieroglyphs, what they are. We see, especially we've been to a museum in Europe or the UK, we would have seen all the Egyptians' artifacts, all with pictograms, and that is the hieroglyphs, writing that the priests in Egypt under the pharaohs wrote. And then, of course, in the area around the Mesopotamia, cuneiform was used, and it lasted for many thousands of years, because we see its remnant, what's left behind, the clay tablets that are chock full of cuneiform writing. And I think the Hammurabi Code is written in cuneiform too, so is the Epic of Gilgamesh, and all these Assyrian writings were all in cuneiform. So in Exodus 32, we read, Moses was summoned up the mountain many times. And one time, verse 15, and Moses turned and went down from the mount, and the two tablets of the testimony were in his hand, and the tablets and the tables were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other were they written. And the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, graven on the tablets, writing of God. Is there a special writing? Now understand that God does not have any special writing or special language. He speaks our language. He speaks our writing. He created everything. So there is no secret writing or secret script or secret codes that that only the priest could decipher and you not. If you're the friend of God, the Bible continuously said, I will reveal myself to my friends. So if you are a friend of God, you believe in him, then he will, through his Holy Spirit, reveal to you his truths. I will leave you now with Irving Finkel, the irrepressible Irving Finkel, who is a curator at the British Museum, and some snippets of hieroglyphs in case you've never seen them. And the next post, I will reveal another script that would have been available to Moses.
Clay tablets preserve the secrets of the world's first civilization, the Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia. Working with wet clay, they developed a system of writing known as cuneiform.
They're evidence of the very first written communication between humans, and as such they are very special indeed.
Cuneiform documents cover largely the first half of human history as it's been recorded. Everything from political affairs right down to economic practices, from 3,400 BC right up to the time of Christ.
People think about hieroglyphs as the main form of writing in ancient Egypt, but many other scripts existed. It might also come as a shock as well to know that not many people could read and write in ancient Egypt, perhaps as many as 1 in 100. Throughout this gallery, there's different examples of scripts that were used in ancient Egypt on a wide variety of medium, from stone through to metalwork, right through to papyrus and coffins. A more joined up form of writing called hieratic that was developed for more everyday documents like letters and contracts, but also extraordinary inscriptions such as this one we have here on display in the gallery, which records the confession of a thief who robbed the tomb of Ramesses VI in the Valley of the Kings. This is during a time of civil unrest, and what you can see is his confession, and it's put into this script, this hieratic script, by a scribe in a courthouse using a reed pen on a sheet of papyrus. This is actually a really important object. It's of great historical importance because it's unique. It's the only document that we have that records a robbery in the Valley of the Kings. Around the 7th century BC, a later phase of scripts developed called Demotic. It's developed from hieratic, but was closer to the spoken language of the time. Initially, it was used for less formal documents, but later expanded into use for religious texts and works of literature.
So I went in the room and I said, I would like to study some Assyriology with you. And he said, oh dear. And this was a time when professors in British universities prided themselves on never having students at all. Nowadays, they have as many as possible so they can extract money from them. So this was Professor Lambert, and he taught Sumerian and Akkadian in Babylonian cuneiform writing. And I went and attended his class again for one morning, and then I knew instantly, the minute I saw this material, this was my life's path stretched ahead of me forever afterwards. And I was 17 then, and I'm now 64, so far, so good. Right. Please, anybody can be 64, there's nothing to it. This is my second guru. This is an example of a Sumerian. So this man lived in ancient Iraq in about 2800. He's a priest. He's a priest. What? The tablet in clay, where it stands for barley. The thing next to it is a few numbers. And the same way, at the bottom, you can see a man's head with a bowl. This is a symbol for rations. And the one above, perhaps the most important, is a jug, which you can stick in the ground because it has a pointed bottom, which is the sign for beer. So the minute writing starts, there's a jolly good sign for beer. To have heavy, long, thick sticks. And pupils who didn't work properly were soundly beaten. And lots of research has established that physical violence is a very good way to make people concentrate on learning. So I've been agitating all over Britain to get this reintroduced in schools, but so far it hasn't been very successful. So this is an example of one of these school texts where the writing on the back, as you will immediately notice, is rather inferior in comparison with that on the front and probably led to a bit of a clip round the ear. Now, anybody who knows anything about ancient Mesopotamia knows what this is. This is the so-called Code of Hammurabi, and it's carved on a large piece of diorite. You can see from the size of the people how big it is, and it has a law code written in the 18th century by this king to lay down how people should conduct themselves. Now, this thing is rather marvelous. This is in the background at the time that school tablet was written. And you can see on the right, that shiny picture is some of the writing. And it's rather peculiar because the writing is at right angles to how we would normally read it. So it's evident that those people who are looking at it cannot read cuneiform script. By the way, we had a meeting on stage the other day about repatriation. And it's a dodgy subject. Of course, I'm not allowed to talk about it, so I will. But I just wanted to say something illustrative about this matter and how insane it is. Because once somebody wrote a very fierce letter to the British Museum saying, you must return the Code of Hammurabi to Iraq. And it was lots of exclamation marks and things.
The joke is the Code of Hammurabi, the stela, was taken by the British Museum from Iran. Iran has taken it from Iraq. So the joke is, who do you return it to? Return it to Iran so that Iran can return to Iraq? Well, I think the Russian government a few years back says they forbid the right of return. That means they will not return anything to any original country. So as it stands, depending on the curators, most major museums, whether St. Petersburg in Russia or the British Museum or the Louvre, they're not returning anything to the original country. I'm glad because here in the British Museum, we see many things from Iraq, especially. That's where Babylon and Nineveh is. And if they will return with the turmoil, war and turmoil, even now, all these probably will be destroyed or sold privately or sold by pirates. In fact, a lot of things are being looted and sold in the marketplace in secret, and there are a lot of private collectors. The museum would not have access to it then, and we, the rest of the world, will be at a loss. But today we have the Code of Hammurabi in the British Museum, and we also have the Rosetta Stone there too. So it would be great if one could visit at least the British Museum once in a lifetime, or the Louvre, and probably stay the whole time, especially in the Archaeology area.